Hello, my beloved brand. Listen, consider this my New Year's gift to you because I knew all along what date this show was going to air. I knew all along, and I knew for my beloved brand, we're going to kick off 2015 with a bang. We're going to kick off 2015 with two absolute hotties. Whereas if you're not a VIP member, you only get to hear them, you don't get to see them. That was done specifically by me. But as members of the beloved brand, you're going to get to enjoy our guest today, just like I am. So without any further ado, let me introduce to you and do the reveal of the one and only SoCal Val.
Hello. Thanks for
Look at
having me.
that, Val. Everybody, I want everybody to just take that in for a couple of minutes.
Just drink it in. Drink it
Drink
in.
it in. Drink it in. All right, Val. I want to pick up where we left off with the on the swerve briefly because I want to get into two big boy questions with you. But basically, you left TNA and you went over to NXT. A, how did that come about? B, what happened when you got there?
I really just wanted to first attend the shows before I really started to, put feelers out, so to speak. And the first show that I attended was in Tampa at the old FCW arena. And I remember just thinking the number one thing that I took away from it was I was so impressed and surprised how character driven NXT was. I think I said to Terry Taylor that day, I said, I really, in no offense, I expected sort of generic wrestler A, generic wrestler B to come out of the curtain. And what I saw were, clown gimmicks and, a guy that was portraying an actor, Aiden English at the time. And I was really impressed with that because I've always been a big fan of kind of the glittering 80s and over the top characters. So that was my first impression, and I thought this is pretty cool. And it was only, it was actually one of their smaller shows. This is before they went to Full Sail. I've been to some of those as well. So I was really impressed with the product right off the bat.
So what happened now? Did you get an opportunity at NXT, or did that just never come about?
With NXT, I've really never done anything. Funnily enough, I've accidentally been on camera because I've attended a couple shows where I've, for some reason, John Cena was at a show and they put him right in front of me. And I thought, oh, great. The second time I'm on camera, funnily enough, I got on camera attending a SmackDown because basically I have to say, I love TNA to death. I loved our product. But, out of respect and to be polite and, just for business purposes, I would never attend WWE shows. And I really missed that. I really missed attending shows as a fan. And that was the most exciting thing for me to be able to do as soon as I left TNA. I thought, this is pretty cool. I can go and I used to go to Raws and SmackDowns all the time by myself. I love going by myself because no one's holding you back. No one's, complaining. It's just, I'm there. I'm here to watch the show. I'm here to cheer. I'm not somebody who just sits there and goes, oh, that was a nice move, golf clap. I'm into it. I'm excited. And I hope that, I have a good time every time I go. And so I was at a SmackDown once. And I again was on, I was second row, thanks to Mr. Flair. And I was just attending the show and I got on camera, I guess, cheering for John Cena. And it got all over the internet that, oh, she's a plant in the audience. It was nothing like that. I was there just like everybody else was to watch the show and see my friends. And with NXT, I haven't really gotten to work for them exactly. The only real official capacity that I've worked for WWE was doing the extra work this past July. And I eventually was, used as a rosebud. I kind of went there not knowing exactly what I was going to do, other than just be looked at and meet everyone backstage. And like we talked about before, just to be around and to be, you're out of sight, out of mind, in my opinion. So to be there and be involved in any capacity was pretty cool. And I eventually got to do Rosebud 3 times. So yeah, with NXT, I really haven't done anything in an official capacity yet.
Val, you gotta use the Terry Taylor card here, man. This guy's got a pipeline to Triple H. He trains Triple H. Triple H hired him. Triple H put him in an important spot there. I don't think you're utilizing the Terry Taylor card.
I have to say, Terry Taylor was my biggest supporter in TNA from day one. I used to deal with Terry Taylor on purpose so I wouldn't have to deal with anybody else because he was just so great and so supportive and, such an advocate for me. But he has been actually in WWE, which has been nice. I'm not the type of person, though. Everyone says, oh, well, so-and-so. You ask them. I'm just not that type of person. Terry Taylor knows my intentions for WWE. I'm not sure, what that would entail. But Terry was, my number one contact So I'm happy to have him there, and I know that if I were to ever be hired there, that at least I have him in my corner because he's such a good guy, such a good man that I've always looked up to, and I feel like if the opportunity were to present itself, that he would be certainly on my team, hopefully.
Yeah, but Val, you got to know, you got to remind them every now and then. You said out of sight, out of mind. You got to remind. I'll send Terry Taylor an email after this so I can remind him about you so you won't have to. Is that okay?
That's sweet. Yeah, I do keep in touch with him regularly, but again, I'm not somebody who's, and maybe that's kind of working, to my detriment. But I'm not somebody who's very pushy. I'm somebody that likes to be persistent, and I'm very much like that with a lot of people in WWE. That's kind of all you can do. But I'm really not someone that's like, hey, push my way in there. I got to get a little more aggressive, maybe.
Hey Val, I want to ask you a couple. I have a couple big boy topics I want to discuss with you.
Okay.
All right. Now, here's the first one. I'm going to tell you what used to be my biggest pet peeve in the wrestling business and what totally used to piss me off and send me over the top. And I'll tell you what it is. I used to hate,
I bet I can
Val,
guess.
when we used to bring in women in different capacities, whether it was an announcer, and I want to say this because I'm going to put her in your category, because the only two women that I never had this problem with was yourself, and you mentioned in the Swerve interview Lauren.
Yeah.
Lauren, who was phenomenal. But here was
Yes.
my biggest pet peeve, Val. We would hire these women and they would be in some kind of capacity backstage, whether they were interviews, whether they were PAs, whether they were producing, whether they were directing. It didn't matter what their roles were, but they were backstage, they were women, and they were working with the boys, okay? Now, Val, it would only literally be a matter of weeks before this one's sitting on that one's lap, and this one's sitting on this one's lap, and this one's flirting with so-and-so, and this one's flirting with this one. It used to drive me freaking crazy. And I'll tell you why, Val, because listen, man, sexual harassment, especially in that kind of environment with testosterone filled wrestlers, it's so easy, and any women could have filed a sexual harassment charge like this. And every time I turn around, this PMA is sitting on this one's lap, and this one is with this one away in a corner talking and flirting. It used to drive me freaking crazy. And I used to be very vocal about that. And I would usually be the one responsible for getting rid of those females, because I knew, forget about getting TNA in trouble, they were going to get themselves in trouble. And it drove me freaking crazy, because the way I looked at it was, you got brought in here and you got hired as a professional. Now you're around these professional wrestlers and you're acting like a freaking high school girl. It was ridiculous. You were, the only person, and Lauren was not there for that long a time. So you were unique, that you were the person there, Val, for so long that you never fell into that trap. You never went down that road. The boys knew not to treat you that way. If anything, they treated you like one of the boys. They respected you. They looked at you differently. And you were the only female, outside of, wrestlers, of course, female wrestlers, but you were really the only female that was around the boys that I never saw fall into that trap. And I have to ask you, Val, like, how? I mean, again, everybody else did. You know how the boys are. They're going to come on to you. They're going to flirt with you. They're going to work you. You know that. These poor imbecilic girls didn't know they were being worked. Next thing you know, they're out of a job. How were you smart enough from day one not to go down that road?
I almost want to flip, thank you, by the way, but I almost want to flip the question to say, how stupid could they have been to not to go down that road? I mentioned before, when people realize that you're in wrestling for the right reasons, that's actually more of a rare thing than I wish that it was. But, single or not, a lot of girls go, oh, I have a boyfriend or whatever. Sometimes when they weren't single, it was worse. Sometimes when it didn't really matter. Girls were going to be girls. And in no way would I ever defend any of that. But I think a lot of these girls come in and they're just, it's like fishing with dynamite. They just have their pick, or as they say, not that they were going to marry any of these guys. Come on. They have their pick of just any of these guys. And honestly, we work with a lot of really, really attractive men that are just throwing the compliments out. And people can say all they want. Oh, well, did so-and-so hit on you? Are you joking? It's a locker room full of dudes. There's probably not any that haven't been somewhat inappropriate or flirted, whatever. But eventually, I think because I was there so long, I think people started to just realize like you're barking up the wrong tree, period. I remember Magnus telling me, some of the new guys would come in and they'd go, oh, how about that Val? And Magnus would go, dude, don't even try. Like, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I remember being actually very complimented by that because I thought, well, good. I'm glad that when a new person comes in, they have the rest of the boys, the Bubbas and the Nick Magnuses that knew me really well. They'd go, you're not going to try. You're barking up the wrong tree. But I think that comes with a lot of time of just not going down that road. And if you haven't gone down that road, you're pretty much, after a few years, you're not going to become that person. And I remember it's funny. There was a PA one time that when I was really, really new, I just came in with David Sahadi to do production assistant. And I wore my cute little outfits, nothing too revealing, but I wear like little short skirts and whatever. And she gave me this huge speech. She hated me. She gave me this huge speech of, you got to be really careful around the boys and they're just going to look at you differently and blah, 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 blah. And she was really, really adamant about how I needed to be careful about how I dress and who I talk to. Turns out this chick was making her rounds and I, outlasted her and never went down that road. And I just thought, wow, it's funny that people that preach the loudest about certain things are really doing it themselves. And I ran into that quite a bit. But yeah, I think it all boils down to the fact of like you mentioned, you're there as a professional. So what do you want more? Do you want, a good career and respect from the boys? Or do you want a little dalliance with this guy or that guy and a little fling here and there that's going to be over just like that? He probably has a wife at home anyway, let's be honest. So it's pretty simple to me. It's what matters and some, dude that isn't going to matter. Trust me.
Now, Val, I want to have this conversation with you as a attractive female, and especially an attractive female in the wrestling business. Now, Val, let me make sure I'm correct about my facts. In 2006, did you have the opportunity to do Playboy?
Yes. And
you turned it down?
No, I did not. I had an opportunity. I'm glad we're bringing this up because there's been a lot of weird. Like you said, Wikipedia is crazy and people have speculated about it. Yes, Tracy Brooks did a celebrity pictorial, or maybe it was a celebrity cyber feature, what have you, for Playboy. Tracy Brooks is still to this day one of my best friends. That same offer was presented to me. I basically had everything in line in terms of the agent that was helping with Playboy. Playboy was on board. I was very excited. It took me a long time to come to the decision of actually posing for Playboy. But I think what people don't realize, it's not just, oh, I'm so ready to take my clothes off. I'm so ready to be on Playboy. What's Playboy going to do for me? I do things because I love it. And I've actually loved Playboy for a long time. I started to watch The Girls Next Door, and that really got me into it. I started to see how Playboy works in terms of, what a playmate is as opposed to a cyber girl, and what the different levels of Playboy are. And me being such a big fan of Holly Madison and that show, I thought, wow, this is really cool. If there was ever a time to do it, it should be now. It took me a while to get used to the idea of, okay, I'm going to be fully nude. Wow. But I actually did agree to it. And TNA just really couldn't come to an agreement with Playboy. And that was pretty much it. I think it's been a long time enough now to talk about it. I never, turned it down. I actually was all on board for it. And it just really wasn't something that TNA and Playboy could agree on. So it just didn't happen.
I mean, and Val, was it pretty much dollars and cents why they couldn't agree?
I think the problem was that Playboy really changed in the last several years in terms of how they featured girls in wrestling. And I was told that the new editors weren't really into wrestling that much. And I think that TNA's problem was perhaps that, I don't think they wanted to be featured in a certain way. I think, WWE has had girls on their covers and things like that back in the day because WWE had a better relationship with Playboy. They weren't PG yet, which is totally understandable. But then when TNA comes around, no offense, TNA is not as global of a brand as WWE, and I think that the way they wanted to feature the TNA girls wasn't the same as how they used to feature the WWE girls, and I think that was probably part of the discrepancy there in the in the feature.
Val, I want to ask you this question, and I want to get your honest, absolute honest thoughts on this. Throughout the years, I mean, let's face it, Val, I worked with some beautiful, 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 drop dead gorgeous women,
Oh,
hundreds of them, Now, now and again, Val, I'll get the rap, and it pisses me off. It really does piss me off. I get the rap of exploiting women in wrestling. And a lot of that rap comes from, basically like what women would wear to the ring, or what they would wear when they're, their outfits, their ring gears, whatever the case may be. That's where a lot of it comes from. Now, I got to tell you, and you fall into this category too. You were a female in wrestling.
uh-huh.
Val, this is how I looked at it. Okay, I looked at it a couple of different ways. First of all, when it comes to the female wrestler, and you too in your role, okay, I know because I saw it firsthand. I know how hard these girls worked on their bodies. I know they went to the gym and put in more time, if not more, than the guys did on their physiques and on their bodies. And they were always working out, and they were always dieting. I mean, just religiously. I used to get on a lot of the girls, honestly, because I used to thought they were too skinny and not eating enough. And I used to get on them from that aspect. But the fact of the matter is, here I am knowing how hard they're working on their bodies, how proud they are of their bodies. I'm also looking at it as, God created these beautiful female figures to be looked at and to be enjoyed. To me, it was art. That's how I really looked at it. And I mean, and on top of that, I didn't tell the girls what to wear going out to the ring. They picked out their own ring attire. Whatever they wanted to wear, they wore. But, like I said, I always took the aspect of these girls work hard for their bodies, man. That's a full-time job. They look great. I know they're not afraid to show their bodies, and they're proud. So if I support that, am I now a guy that's, exploiting females? I just want to know what your take on that would be.
It's so funny that you bring this up, because this is the perfect topic for me, because you're talking to someone whose favorite female match of all time, hands down, is WCW WWF Invasion, Tori Wilson, Stacy Keibler against Trish Stratus and Lita, bra and panties match. The only thing that I miss more than anything in WWE, people ask me, what would you change? And I'm like, I'm in any position to say what I would change, but I miss the divas being over the top, girly, and having the bra and panties matches and the evening gown matches and the lingerie matches. I love it. I love everything about it. And truth be told, I probably would have been more apt to start wrestling if I knew that those were the kind of matches I could have been in, truthfully. I totally agree about, how they work out so much and work on their bodies. I've always loved that, because it goes back to me being a girl wrestling fan, and other female wrestling fans might take this completely differently. And I don't want to take anything away from the types that are, the AJ Lee's, that are sort of more of the, it's okay to be a tomboy. That's cool, because that's her genre, and she's amazing at it, and that's great. I personally am kind of the other end of the spectrum, where I used to look up to these girls that were over the top feminine. There's a scene in Ready to Rumble, which I love, by the way, unapologetically, where the Nitro girls are getting ready in their locker room, and they've got their satin robes on, and they're putting the lotion on, and they're hanging out in their lingerie. To me, growing up watching wrestling, having Stacy Keibler and Tori Wilson in backstage promos, I have them all on VHS right over here, by the way. I had made my own little diva volumes for years, and I loved seeing these girls backstage getting ready in their satin robes and, putting their makeup on and being over the top sassy and coming out and doing their laundry. I wanted to be those girls. I still want to be those girls. So I never understood. That's why I did things like Pillow Talk, and I made, kind of sexy references in photo shoots doing lingerie and having the girls be over the top, because I wanted the male wrestling fan to think, as it should have been, that what were the knockouts up to in their locker room? I would love to get a sneak peek to see what those girls are doing. Would a male wrestling fan really want to know that they're backstage, eating, fattening food and sitting around in sweatpants and blah, blah, blah? No, I as a male wrestling fan want to know, wow, they're in there putting garters and hosiery on and powdering their faces and being over the top girly. That's how I think that the girls should, at least most of the girls should be perceived, because that's sexy. And I'm totally on the bandwagon of, showing what you got. Maybe not over the top. A lot of things in ECW I had a problem with where it was a little much and, got a little graphic. But for the most part, I really, really miss all of that, glossy men's magazine type of scenarios. So yeah.
Val, here's the thing with me too, bro. You got to understand, first of all, I've been married now 31 years, I think. So like, yeah, through my career, I was married. I had 3 kids. I swear to you, Val, like I never looked at the girls that way. I was always trying to look at the girls for the guys watching at home and the audience watching at home, which we used to be after. That's changed today. It was males between 18 to 34 years old. That's who I was writing for at home. And I knew that, guys that age, they wanted to see sexy. And, Val, I think there's a huge difference between sexy and slutty. And I want to ask you this, Val. Listen, every time I go on the YouTube or the Twitter or the Facebook, there's all these lingerie, sexy photos of SoCal Val that I see them everywhere, Val. But Val, I got to ask you this, and this is like what I don't know. I know what the difference is as a guy. But Val, every one of these photos I ever see you in, to me, are sexy and classy and upscale. But like, how do you... I don't know, Val, is it just your presence and who you are and how you carry yourself and that's why I'm viewing them the way I do? Because there really is a fine line between sexy and slutty. There is. But everything with you is, it always is like, that should be, that should be a poster or that should be an advertisement for something. It's always so highbrow. What is it that you're able to portray that without, I don't know if you're trying, I don't know. Explain that to me.
Well, first of all, thank you. I think, I know it sounds really horrible and I hope this doesn't come across as catty, but I think it really, to have an eye for what is classy, sexy, and I've done some some risque stuff, but usually I've always tried to keep it very classy. I think it really comes down to how you were raised and what you were taught as acceptable or not. I'm not saying that my mother, for example, loves the idea that I was going to do Playboy or that I may someday still do Playboy. I don't know, and that's another kind of area where it's a little. I think the only way you can ever do nude in any way sort of a classy way is Playboy. I think everything else would just really be, other than maybe a film role, I'm not really into anything that's not only Playboy. It's, it's such an institution. But I think it just comes down to having an intrinsic feel for what is upscale or what's going to be, leaving a little bit to the imagination or not. It's just interesting. For example, Playboy does a lot of things on social media, which I'm a big social media person, and Twitter. I've kind of understood the business side of Twitter, which is the more followers you have, the more exposure there is for you. Little funny word there, exposure. But the more that you have in terms of followers, really the more respected you are in sort of the modeling industry, and you're taken more seriously, and you're up for bigger jobs because you have a social media following. I've gotten jobs, for example, for different modeling gigs where they probably based half their decision on the fact that I'm going to promote what I'm doing through Twitter, which I have around 111,000 followers. And that's okay. You really have to use Twitter for business purposes like that, and I completely do. But I've done a few things for Playboy, Frisky Friday, and I'll do like, hashtag, and Playboy's cool. They've talked to me about, retweeting, and they've asked me to do different things. And but it's interesting to see the other girls and what they do for, say, a Frisky Friday or a Tuesday tease or different hashtags that they have. And it's interesting because I think just even it's even a question of an angle that you're going to do. Like I try to be a little artsy in the way that I do it and maybe just show, cleavage instead of legs or, one or the other. I really think that it just comes down to the girl. And some girls are just, they don't really, they can't help but come across as a little bit cheap and trashy. And that's just certain people. I think it's in the way that you dress. And I'm so glad that you brought up in the way that you carry yourself, because that's certainly a big deal. One of the guys one time said something like, "Oh, you're more marriage material." And I would hope that somebody would look at me and say, "Wow, she can do all these sexy photo shoots, but she would probably be a good wife." You know what I mean? Rather than, "Oh gosh, she looks like the type that, I wouldn't bring home to mom," or "She looks like the type that would be, someone's on the side chick." I've never understood that sort of why girls are okay with being on the trashier side of things, but I don't even know if some girls know that they're being perceived like that. I can clearly detect it, but I don't know. I think it's just something you were taught. I think it's something that you have. It's like having an eye for fashion. You either know style or you don't, and it's really, really hard to teach.
Val, again, I think it all goes back to the way you carry yourself. If there was a picture online of you wearing something and another girl wearing the totally same thing, I guarantee you're going to represent one thing and they may represent something totally different. And I mean, again, Val, I think too, like when you talk about it, because I've been around so many girls in wrestling, and I'm not talking about the female workers. I'm talking about other girls in wrestling, whether you were a valet or whether you were a ring girl, and they all fell into the trap. So,
Right.
like when I talk about you and the way you carry yourself, that had to come from your upbringing. I mean, there's no question about that. But like, so now it gets my curiosity. Like, what exactly was it in your upbringing? I could understand now if you had three older brothers and these three older brothers are going to keep you in line. That's one thing. But not having that influence, how was something like this really instilled in you to be able to carry it off in an industry that's infested with sharks?
I think lots of sharks, sharks in the water. I think it really does come down to my mom, and here I will get a little emotional. Hopefully not. But my mom has been a single mom. My father died the month before I was born, and she's just been a single. She is the epitome of the single mom with confidence. She's a very independent woman. She's kind of, she's just, I mean, I think if you were to meet my mom, you might have met her actually, but when people meet my mom, they kind of go, oh, okay, they kind of get it. They see how she dresses, and you become your mother no matter what you want to think you're going to become. You can't get away from it. And I'm thrilled if I'm ever compared to my mother, because I just see her as this great, style icon and this like independent woman and everything. And I think it just comes from that. I think that some of, and then my sisters were the same way. I have two older sisters. They were brought up in entertainment. The eldest sister now lives in London. She's married to a musician that she met on tour. She was in a boy and girl pop group that opened up for Britney Spears and NSYNC and Nickelodeon. And the middle sister is now married to a pastor, but she had her time doing music. She does music in church, obviously, but she had her time in a girl group as well. So my sisters were always in entertainment. My mother, we met in sync when I was 9 because she placed their dance choreographers, and that's how we got to be around all of the pop groups and entertainment. And I just never got into singing. I can sing, but I never got into it because I always just wanted to do wrestling. As soon as I saw it, I was just done for life. But I think it just comes from being raised by a single mom that was just really independent and never settled for anything in life, whether it was, a man or anything. She's a really strong female empowerment character, which is, again, why I always gravitated toward a Stephanie McMahon, because she was such a strong female, but still feminine and still, not, I think a lot of people misperceive being independent and being a strong woman as, okay, well, I have to wrestle now. Okay, I have to wear leather and I have to be, one of the guys. I'm not really one of the guys. I can get along with the guys, but I'm a lady. And I think being a lady is just such a lost thing. And when people see it happening, in terms of how you act, how you present yourself, how you don't use certain phrases, and how you're careful about swear words, and the way that the way that you carry yourself as a lady. I think it's a very rare thing in this day and age, unfortunately.
You know who is very, very much like that, Val, that I worked with? Very, very much like that. A lady, the way she carried herself and stood out from the pack. And you probably never met her before, but I'd like to hear what your views are on her. But Rena Mero was very, very, very much like that when I worked with her.
I love that. I don't think I've ever met her. She's one of the very few that I have never met. Yeah, she was one of the ones I think that was so involved with modeling as well, that I remember thinking that her photos were just so gorgeous. And I saw her be overtly sexy, with some of the things she did with body paint and the handprints and all of that. But she's still, and again, like you said, the way that she carried herself at ringside, there's such a different presence with her. She comes across as so confident and so almost regal, but without being, too, she could be the bitch character, of course, but she just came across as very, just very, upscale and ritzy and prissy, but in a very sexy way. And I think that was probably, again, why she stood out. I never got to meet her or see how she was in person, but yeah, I always did notice that. I really loved her with Hunter Hearst Helmsley. I thought, because maybe it was just something about her face or the way that she acted that I just thought, wow, she's pristine, if you will.
Yeah. Now, Val, let me ask you this. I get the impression that first and foremost, I mean, obviously, the number one goal would be the WWE, and we're going to get all over Terry Taylor with that. I'm going to email him as soon as I'm done here and ask him what's he thinking about. Let's move this along. Now, Val, but let's say that doesn't happen. Now, Val, we know, listen, I see you modeling everywhere. You can model for the next 20 years. I mean, there's no question about that. But say the WWE thing doesn't happen. What is plan B? What is it? Again, the modeling's there. That's a gimme. You're going to be able to do that. Spokesperson, all that stuff. But is there something else that maybe you haven't accomplished yet that you're really yearning to deep down inside?
Well, obviously that is the biggest goal of WWE. But the coolest thing about that wrestling has gotten, the experience I've gotten through wrestling has been the on-air hosting thing, or as they would call it in the UK, presenting. You know, the coolest thing about that is how can you go around in life and just say, oh, I'm only a wrestling manager, I'm only a model. Models these days are not just models, and I luckily have time on my side. I'm 28 and I've been modeling for quite a long time. I've actually gotten to, since TNA, it's been kind of nice in the way that my schedule's been more free to model, in the UK and model in Toronto quite a bit and do different types of modeling where I love as I told you, loving lingerie matches and things. I love doing the Maxim style glamour modeling, but to get away from it and do more fashion and be taken more seriously as a model has been really, really cool. But I think where my strengths lie are in announcing and being an on-air host. And the coolest thing about that is, I love wrestling. I love WWE. I love TNA. I love all wrestling. But at the same time, I'm also, I hate to say a businesswoman. That sounds a little silly, but I'm also business minded in the sense that I know that that's not something you can't put all your eggs in one basket, period. And the cool thing about on-air hosting is I could see myself doing a number of things. I just signed on to do a travel show in Miami. I just did a pilot for a Food Network show called 2F by C. And I just feel like there's, with having those skills as a performer, also having backstage skills where, being at social media, writing and producing a bit, that'll help too. But I could even see myself, probably way later in life, maybe, 40s, seeing myself doing the news or something. I'm sure that if I have a family by then, that's something nice to know that I could do something locally would be, being a reporter or being somehow a broadcaster on something more local, like the news or, a lifestyle show. But I think on-air hosting is probably, announcing is something that I'll see myself doing for the most part. That'll be my bread and butter, if you will.
Yeah, you know what? Too, I got to admit, we should talk about this too, Val. What we're starting to do here at the VIP section for the brand is I'm trying to create a network here. Me and my partner Chris, we're trying to create a network here where you can come to the brand and there's a host of wrestlers on there. 15, 20 wrestlers on there that are writing blogs, that are doing their own podcasts. I think you would be a phenomenal podcast host, a phenomenal interviewer, because one thing you didn't point out there there that is very, 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 very important. And we talked about it for at length in this conversation was how you handle yourself around celebrities and personalities. You have to be professional, and you're great at doing that. And I think maybe a podcast host or doing your own show or something. I think that would be right up your alley.
Definitely. There's the Huffington Post interviewed me through a couple guys in the UK that gave me a tour of the Houses of Parliament, which was amazing. I'm a big British monarchy, Tudor era. I love anything involving that. I'm a big history fan. They interviewed me, and they have a podcast called Royal Ramblings that I've talked about kind of contributing to. Schedule-wise, it's hard to commit to too much, but yeah, I definitely can see that because my background really is in interviewing. And what's funny is to do interviews like this, to be interviewed, doesn't make me nervous, but it's just a little odd because I'm always the one asking questions and trying to, as you say, be the Oprah. So I'm definitely used to being on the side of being the interviewer. So I can definitely see more of that happening. Everyone and their mom has a podcast nowadays. I'm not sure how I could set mine apart, but I think it's certainly in my genre to do some sort of hosting in that way. And obviously, I love talking about wrestling. So any job where I get, the opportunity to talk about wrestling, and that's why I'm always so friendly with the fans, because I love talking about wrestling. At a convention, you'll see me there talking for hours about, remember this match, and oh my god, Cactus Jack was so great in that match. I'm talking about all kinds of things that would be considered markish to people that are a little pompous about that fact. I've never apologized for being a mark for wrestling, as it's called. So yeah, I can see that. It'd be cool.
Hey Val, I'm in about a week, I'm going to England, and Val, I'm going to be 54 this month, and I've purposely never left the country outside of Canada because you talk about comfort zones. I don't even like leaving the state. I don't even like leaving my house, to be honest with you. But I know I'm getting older now. I had the opportunity to go to England. I've always gotten out of it in the past because I didn't like being that far away from home. So now I committed to this IPW UK. I'm going there in a week. Val, I'm a little bit scared going to England. Am I going to be safe there? Talk to me about this England thing.
Well, the good news is you speak the same language, so that's always good. If you're abroad, the cool thing to do is go to England because it's probably the easiest transition for you. It's so funny. We're so opposites like that. I'm the kind of person that when I go anywhere, I don't want to go to the same stores that we have. I don't want to eat the same food I could get at home. I want to do everything. I ask people, what would a local do? How do you say this? And I want to just soak up every bit of culture of the place that I'm in all the time. And England, of course, has always been my favorite. I've been a UK fanatic since before I can even remember, probably 3 years old. I wanted tea sets because I thought it was British. But England's going to be amazing. I'm not sure what area you're going to. I have a sister in London, so when I go, I usually stay with her, and I'm just the ultimate tourist. I'm always just alone going to Big Ben and, Westminster Abbey, and just oh my gosh, I love traveling and I love the UK so much. You have to see Big Ben. You have to get a selfie with Big Ben, of course. That's job number one for you. Let's see. What should you try to eat? Bangers and mash. They have lots of little pies you're gonna love. Oh, I'm so jealous.
That's the thing. It's like the names of the food scares me a little, like bangers and mash. And isn't there they talk a lot about this blood sausage? See, that kind of stuff scares me a little bit.
Their meat, yeah, it's a little interesting to go to the market and see. They have a lot of ox tongue, and they have pigeon. I was out to dinner with my brother-in-law and my sister, and he's from Dublin, so he's lived in London for quite a while, but he's as you can tell, Dublin and England, they're kind of Dublin and London. You can see there's a little bit of there over the years. But we were eating somewhere, and I saw a pigeon on the menu, and I was like, oh, is it some sort of different, really neat, interesting pigeon? He's like, no, it's just pigeon. I thought, oh God.
Well,
I tried to be adventurous, but
between you and me, it sounds like I'll be frequenting McDonald's quite often while I'm in England. But anyway, Val, listen, I know your social media. I know that's your thing. I know you love conversing with the fans. I remember when you hit the 100,000 mark, and now you're saying you got 111,000. How can fans stay in contact with you? Give them every possible avenue where they could stay in touch with SoCal and her career.
I feel like if you know at SoCal Valerie on Twitter, I post links to all the other different things that I'm doing, whether it's a show or my Facebook, my Instagram. But what I really focus on is Twitter. I feel like that's the easiest way to talk to the fans. Facebook, I have one, but it's not really, it's connected to my Twitter. I don't use it as much. But Twitter at SoCal Valerie, that's where I'm, posting about where I'm headed next. And I do little videos on Vine that I post through Twitter. So if you remember at SoCal Valerie, you can follow me on everything. And that's the cool thing about Twitter and social media is I really hope that fans see it and realize that I'm trying to really take them with me on every journey that I'm on and share every experience. And I do tweet a lot. I used to make fun of Victoria, Lisa Marie, that she tweeted so often. And then when I got into it, now I tweet all the time. And I try to post, if you ever see me doing the hashtag 88%, again, being business minded, I always look at my Twitter analytics and I figured out, where my biggest fan base is and the ratio of how many female fans to male fans that I have. And to no one's surprise, the selfies that I tweet and the photo shoots that I do, I have 88% male following. So, on some of my more risque photo shoots, I'll do the hashtag 88%. But yeah, if you find me on Twitter at SoCal Valerie, come with me for all my crazy adventures and follow me.
Now, Val, I got to ask you one last personal question. Do you wake up looking like that every day?
I just woke up. Yeah.
That's what I thought. Well, listen, Val, I want to personally thank you. And like I said, first of all, I want to apologize for always being so consumed with work that when we were actually together, I didn't spend the time with you I should have, and I wished I would have. That's why this is important for me. But listen, I also want to thank you for not only bringing class into professional wrestling, but also, setting an example for other women, that work inside of the business of the way you should carry yourself and with the confidence and being a professional. And listen, any female ever wants to get into the wrestling business, this is the lead you want to follow right here. Val got where she got at her age for a reason. And that reason is intelligence, class, professionalism. And I just want to thank you, Val, for bringing that to wrestling that I think is so much needed when it comes to females in the business.
Well, that honestly, I'm getting all teary-eyed again. That's the most wonderful thing you could ever say to me, because like I've always tried to say, anyone can be hot, anyone can be semi-decent at talking, whatever, but that's what I've always what you just mentioned is what I've always hoped to achieve and strive to put out there is being, a good example and someone who's classy and again in it for the right reasons. So I just want to thank you because not only, this interview aside, you were somebody that gave me a huge opportunity, the biggest opportunity of my career in TNA. And I was just, it's totally okay that you didn't have much time. You were a busy guy and I was half starstruck because you're Vince Russo. So I just want to say thank you as well. It's really an honor. Seriously.
Well, Val, thank you so much for coming on the show. We're going to check in with you. I'm going to bring you back on as a guest. I'm sure you're going to have more to talk about once we get Terry starts working and Terry starts doing what he's got to do over there. Well, then I'm going to probably not be able to get you on the show when you're with the WWE. You see the dilemma I'm faced with now? Do I help her get into WWE? I can't bring her on the show, but I want to see your dreams come true. So I'm going to get on Terry Taylor immediately. But Val, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you so much. Mwah.